Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 2 of Ramos Radio. My name is Ramos, and today we will be covering MMA and football as usual. I actually already recorded an episode, but I had to start again because breaking news that came out literally just this morning as I woke up. Demetrius Johnson, MightyMouse himself, has retired. One of the GOATs of MMA. To some, he is the GOAT. Joe Rogan considers him the GOAT. I think a lot of people probably consider John Jones the GOAT, but he's up there amongst those names. John Jones, GSP, Anderson Silva. Demetrius Johnson is right there with them. First ever UFC flyweight champion. Most consecutive title defenses in UFC history with 11. Most submissions in UFC title fights. Tied with John Jones for the most UFC title defenses. Retired as the ONE FC flyweight champion. Some incredible moments in his career. Famously, the Ray Borg submission when he just picked him up like a little kid. Caught him midair in an armbar. One of the, if not the most amazing submission I've ever seen in my life. One of the best has called it a day. And it's interesting that this happened because I was thinking about making a video on how the GOATs are decided in the sport of MMA compared to other sports. Because, funnily enough, in our sport, in MMA, it doesn't seem like fighters are really... It doesn't really matter if a fighter is caught cheating. They're still considered up there with the best. I'd probably say GSP and Demetrius Johnson are probably the only ones that didn't have a failed drug test that are amongst those names. Let's say, for example, John Jones, Anderson Silva, GSP, Demetrius Johnson. Who else would be up there? I guess... Well, mainly those four are probably at the top. If I'm forgetting someone, I guess you'll probably tell me. But I think one of the reasons why doping isn't really seen as negatively in this sport in terms of the GOAT conversation as other sports is mainly because of two reasons. One, the sport is relatively young, and because of this, the majority of its years were spent without anti-doping agencies kind of governing the sport. We've seen stories and we've heard stories from multiple fighters that have fought in companies like Pride, mentioning that they were pretty much invited to take, they were kind of egged on, they were told in their contracts that they wouldn't be tested for drugs. So, I mean, if you're not going to be tested, why not push towards getting a win and making a lot of money? It makes sense. That would be one reason. And two, unfortunately, a lot of the people that are in the GOAT conversations have been caught, and it leaves a small pool of fighters who would be eligible. If we were to say, if you've taken drugs ever in your career and you've been caught, you can't be included in the conversation. It leaves a very small pool of fighters who are probably all quite close in ability and quality of fighters and achievements for us to really think, oh, there is a standout person. But I think that's a little bit of an excuse as well, because we have people like Henry Cejudo, for example, who's achieved a lot in the sport. Daniel Cormier, who's achieved a lot in the sport. Stipe Miocic, Demetrius Johnson himself. GSP hasn't been caught taking drugs, I believe. Khabib hasn't been caught taking drugs. There's a few names out there that we could probably put into a conversation. I think as we're getting closer to, as the sport is progressing, we can probably make a respectable list, not including those that have been caught taking drugs. But with that being said, it's going to be it's fascinating to see one of the guys that I grew up with retiring. I'm 26 now. I've been watching the sport for roughly 10 years, on like weekly, following the sport, everything for about 10 years. This is the first time where I've seen one of the best, or one of the GOATs retire from my generation. And I always wondered what it would feel like, because I've seen other people retire, like Shogun, for example, who retired recently, but I didn't experience him at his best. So I didn't quite understand the significance of a fighter like him in MMA. Obviously, I've done my history. I know he was an elite fighter and his place in history. But I didn't see it with my own eyes. Demetrius Johnson, I've seen his whole career with my own eyes. Pretty much his whole career, at least in the UFC onwards, I've seen it with my eyes. I've seen the highs, the lows, the big trade that happened with Ben Askren, and thinking, why had the UFC done this? The disrespect that was sent towards him because he's a flyweight. That's probably another reason why he's not considered the GOAT. I mean, he's elite. He's the most well-rounded fighter that I know in the sport. Elite stand-up, striking, grappling, jiu-jitsu, game planning, fight IQ, all of that. He's pretty much the perfect fighter. It's just that he's small. Hence the nickname. I mean, MightyMouse. He's 5'3". He fights in the flyweight division. That's the only knock. I guess everyone says that the competition that he faces isn't the best of quality compared to people like John Jones, GSP, where they fought other greats like Matt Hughes, Nick Diaz, in GSP's case. John Jones went through Murderers Row, Lyoto Machida, Shogun Rua, Alexander Gustafsson, DC. It's just to name a few. But yeah, seeing a person that is considered one of the greats retire, and I've watched him, it makes me start to think. It makes me appreciate where the sport is, how far he's carried the sport, how well he's represented it, and I just wish the guy the best when it comes to his future endeavors. Obviously, he's a gamer. I know he's going to be more than successful. He hasn't taken a crazy amount of damage, so he should be fine in terms of all of that side of the health side of things. It's going to be... I just hope that he's inducted in the UFC Hall of Fame. I know sometimes the UFC is a bit... When they've fallen out with fighters, they can be a bit petty. Randy Couture is famously not considered... is not in the UFC Hall of Fame, but he's one of the first people to ever win 2 belts. I think he's the first ever person to win 2 belts in 2 divisions, at least in the UFC. I might be wrong. But... yeah, hopefully he gets... I think they left on good terms. I think he's still respected. Amongst his peers, he doesn't need to worry about that. He's definitely respected. But yeah, MightyMouse has called it a day. It's a fascinating thing, man. Best of luck to him in whatever he does next. We have a UFC fight card today, tonight. Sean Brady versus Gilbert Burns as the headliners. The card isn't really great. I think the co-main is half decent as well. Jessica Andrade versus Natalia Silva. Don't know much about Natalia Silva, but I've heard she's on a 6-fight win streak. So I'm assuming this is probably going to be a number 1 contenders fight, considering Valentina and Alexa Grasso are fighting. I think UFC 306, which isn't too far away. I believe it's in October. Oh no, it's next weekend actually. Yeah, so this is probably a number 1 contenders fight for that. So the top 2, the main event and co-main event, are important. The rest of the card, fairly new people. Just seeing some new talent in the UFC. It's a little bit bleak, to be fair. But that main event and the co-main event have title implications. The main event, Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. This is an interesting fight because they're both pretty much in the same boat here. They... if whoever wins this fight will probably have one more fight. Will probably be 1 fight away from the title fight, if they can win that as well. Gilbert Burns is 38. He's coming off a loss against Jack Della Maddalena, where he actually did look really good in that fight. Probably would have won the decision if it did get to the end, but within the last minute and a half, he did get finished. Got caught going in for a takedown. Jack Della Maddalena timed the knee perfectly and just finished him, but he did look good. Sean Brady's coming off a win against Kelvin Gastelum, a very dominant win as well. A lot of people were really disappointed in Kelvin Gastelum's performance there. The fight prior to that, he actually lost to the now champ Bilal Muhammad, and he was on an incredible run before that. Bilal Muhammad actually gave him his first loss, so he took his O away. That loss actually aged quite well because now he's lost to the guy who's the champion. There's a little bit of a story there. So if he can win this fight against Gilbert Burns, maybe fight someone like a Ian Gary, or maybe even a Kamaru Usman, put his name in the hat for a title shot after that against whoever's around, maybe Leon Edwards as well. There's a little bit of a story there, so we can build that. Gilbert Burns, though, like I was saying, he's 38 years old, coming off a loss. If he loses this fight to Sean Brady, it's pretty much over for him. If he wins, one fight away, similar, he'll probably fight like a Kamaru Usman rematch, maybe a Leon Edwards fight, one fight for the title. But if he loses, this is probably the last time we'll see Gilbert Burns. At least fight towards the title. Maybe he wants to stay competing because he is still a good fighter. He is still at a high level. He could have some fun fights. I've heard rumors of Jorge Masvidal wanting to come back. Maybe he could fight him. There's obviously other old guards in the division like Kamaru Usman where he could get a rematch. Colby Covington could be a good fight. He might just be able to give a good fight to some of the up-and-coming youngsters. All depends on how he wants to continue his career, I guess. But yeah, it is pretty much do or die for him when it comes to the title picture. I expect this to be a really good fight. I've written some notes down on how I see the fight happening. I went back and watched these guys' previous performances, and I've looked at some of their tendencies, at least the way that they fight as well. Sean Brady likes to fight off the back foot. If you think back to Tyron Woodley, how a lot of the time he was criticized, at least in his situation, but he would fight pretty much as a counter striker, looking to wait for his opponent to pressure, kind of staying close to the fence, and when an opponent does strike, he'd look to counter with the overhand right or maybe with a takedown. Sean Brady is a little bit like that, but he does throw more combinations than Tyron Woodley did. So if his opponent does throw, let's say, a straight right, and he moves his head, he'll throw maybe a 3-piece combination. Might throw just a single combination, a single strike, or even go for a takedown. Sean Brady is very explosive, very strong, and very well rounded. So if he goes for a combination, a takedown, he can compete literally anywhere on the ground. So those are the tendencies that I've seen of him. He doesn't really lead, but he has the ability to lead the fight. He can apply pressure himself, but I've just noticed over the last few videos over his last few fights, that's the way that he likes to fight. Gilbert Burns likes the pressure. But the thing with Gilbert Burns is he doesn't throw a lot of combinations when he's standing. Like, he throws heavy punches. He does look to finish pretty much all the time. And we've seen him knock down opponents. I mean, he knocked down Kamaru Usman early on in their title fight against him a few years ago. The fight against Jack Della Maddalena, he had him hurt a few times. Famously, the big fight against Khamzat Chimaev, he was getting pressured but was able to land a few heavy punches and even make a scary fight like Khamzat Chimaev kind of second guess entering without caution. I see Sean Brady winning this fight. I think he can compete on the floor. He want to keep the fight standing because Gilbert Burns is an incredible grappler. But even if the fight does go there, I do think he'll believe in his ability to compete, at least compete, keep himself safe, maybe even get into some good positions. But I think his coaching team will probably tell him the game plan is to at least stay on the feet, maybe avoid grappling, use your good grappling to get some good positions, but I think keeping the fight standing is best for him because he does throw combinations. Gilbert Burns doesn't really throw a lot of combinations, like I said, but also when Gilbert Burns gets hit, he does show it a lot. A lot of people like to have a poker face when they get hit, they like to smile and say, nah, that didn't hurt me, or they like to at least stay in the pocket or roll with the punches. Gilbert Burns, however, I've noticed that he has this tendency where if he gets hit, he begins to retreat straight away. And he's in a defensive position, pretty much kind of circling out or running away, in a sense. I think Sean Brady might be able to use that to his advantage and get off some good combinations rather than... Because I don't see... Gilbert Burns might be able to... might react and hit him with a counter right or something like that, but a lot of the time I'll just see him circling away. Sean Brady might be too fast for him. Like I said, he's strong. Gilbert Burns is a strong guy, but Sean Brady's strength might equal it, if not be even better. I just think it's time for the young in the welterweight division, I think it's the time for the younger fighters to take over now. We've seen Ian Gary beat a legend of Michael Venom Page recently, and also beat Neil Magny quite convincingly. Jack Della Maddalena beat Gilbert Burns. He's climbing the ranks. Shavkat is at the top at the moment. Sean Brady, I see him amongst those guys in terms of quality of fighter. So I think it's just time for the new guard to take over. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Gilbert Burns wins, but I'm picking Sean Brady to win that. Solely on I think he matches up well, but also it's time for the new guys to take over in the welterweight division. Title picture right now. But yeah, that is it for MMA talk. Roundup on football, actually. The Premier League is on a break at the moment. The football's in the international break currently. We are 3 games into the season. I think a lot of teams have started to show where they are in the season, what kind of season they will have. Some teams have shocked us positively, some teams have shocked us negatively. But yeah, let's just look at the current top 4. Man City, Liverpool, Brighton, Arsenal. I'll say top 5 because Newcastle joint points with Brighton and Arsenal. Man City, just looking like Man City, ridiculous. Haaland got 2 hat-tricks already, 7 goals in 3 games. It's incredible what that guy could do. It's scary to think that City just aren't falling off. They're able to keep this level of professionalism. They're high quality football as well. They're able to just do what Man City do, patient football, and pounce whenever they have the opportunity. They might win 5, let's be honest. It might be 5 in a row for them. If it is, it's a long day, because English fans will then have to admit it's become a farmers' league, as a lot of people have said. Other leagues are like a Bayern Munich in Bundesliga. Bayern Munich winning so many trophies in a row. If Man City win 5 in a row, it's an incredible feat, but it's very disappointing for the league, because although the league is very, very, it has a lot of quality in it, it's just like, what are we meant to do now? I mean, it's probably this is definitely the greatest Premier League team of all time, in my opinion. This run is incredible. I think, so they've won 4, they lost 1, and had the previous 3, I believe. So what's there, 7 in the last 8 or 6 in the last 8? I think maybe Chelsea won 1 before. But, bruv, it's Man City's Man City. Pep's dominated the league. A lot of people, when he first came, didn't think he could do it. Looks like they're just going to continue with that. But Liverpool have looked very good this season. They've kind of silenced the doubters. I'm one of the doubters, because I had a few questions. I wouldn't say doubter. I had a few questions that I wanted to see answered before I could make an honest opinion on what I thought of them. The questions that I had were, Jurgen Klopp leaving, how would the team respond? New manager Arne Slot, would he make any drastic changes to the playstyle or to personnel? Would he sell anyone? Would anyone fall out of favour with him? And then just how the players would adapt to a new manager's style. And pretty much everything looks perfect for them right now. I mean, they're the only team in the league that hasn't conceded a goal yet. 7 goals scored, 0 conceded. Attacking players are on fire. Midfield looks very good. They've tried a new thing with Ryan Gravenberch being their 6. Arne Slot doesn't really favour Wataru Endo in that position at the moment. Ryan Gravenberch, I think they were hoping to get a DM in, but just wasn't able to. So now Ryan Gravenberch looks like he's going to be their 6 going forward, and he's looked very good. Some signs of some negative things, but I guess it'd be more nitpicking when it comes to his performances, because he has played really well. You can kind of tell that he's not a natural 6, but his ability to play in that position, his footballing ability in general is good enough, and it looks like it's been translating well. The system and the way that they play kind of protects him as well a little bit. With McAllister and Szoboszlai, they do have quite mobile players, so they're able to react, as well as the defense being quite mobile as well. Arne Slot has a system that kind of protects Gravenberch and plays to his strengths, which is very good. They didn't really sign anyone until the last day of the season when they got in Michael Chiesa. Not Michael Chiesa, sorry, he's a MMA fighter. Federico Chiesa. Which is a bargain of a deal that they got him. I think, was it 15 million euros or something like that? Really cheap, to bolster their attack, to have fresh competition for positions, and maybe help out Salah on the right wing. I'm not sure if they had anyone as a backup for the right wing, except for maybe Harvey Elliott, but I guess they would probably prefer him to be a centre mid. But yeah, Luis Diaz is on fire. He's got 3 goals this year. Gakpo coming off a really good Euros tournament. He's got confidence this year. Darwin Núñez off a good international tournament as well. Copa America, he had really good performances there. The team just looks like they're flowing. Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Alisson, the old guards, Trent, Robbo, they just look solid as well. They've got the core still there. It looks like Liverpool are going to be in a title race this year. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Man City is going to win, because they just look unstoppable, but Liverpool will definitely be up there in May, at least in the race. My Arsenal, I think we will be up there. I think we were a bit unfortunate not to have 3 wins in a row. The red card for Declan Rice against... was it against Brighton, actually? Yeah, it was against Brighton. That was a bit harsh, in my opinion. But we've looked pretty much the same as we did last year. Solid defensively. Solid on the ball, creating chances. Bukayo Saka looks really sharp this year. Trossard pretty much scoring the same way. Havertz looking good. Odegaard looking good. Martinelli, this is a big year for him to prove himself, to prove that he belongs in this team, in the starting lineup. It's looking good for Arsenal. Brighton are looking good. They beat... obviously, they've got 2 wins as well. Newcastle looking good. One team that kind of disappointed me a little bit was Manchester United. They looked good in the first day of the season, but have been a bit unfortunate in the next 2 games. They lost to Brighton. They lost to Liverpool 3-0 at home. It's not looking great. They have an interesting system, because currently they're playing Mount up top. I think he was injured for the last game, so they started Xerxes, but Mount usually playing up top, alongside Bruno, pretty much in like 2 false nines. It looked really good at the beginning of the game of the season. So the first game and the first half of the Brighton game, I think Mount came off that for the second half. It looks okay. The team does look like it's alright, but I'm not sure how good they can be relying on them. I think they need Højlund back ASAP, because he can provide that pressing from the front like they have Mount doing currently. I think Mount starting up top and Xerxes on the bench was a tactical decision, mainly for the press. Xerxes doesn't look like he's a mobile presser. But I think with Højlund coming back into the team, it'll look good. Rashford's a bit worrying. Obviously, it's early doors. It's kind of similar to Martinelli, where this is a big season for him as well, where he needs to prove that he is still the guy for Manchester United. I think the team, the board, will be very patient with him, because he is homegrown. He is Marcus Rashford. He is Manchester United. But the fans are starting to be very restless. There's a few things they've done in that Liverpool game that were a bit disappointing in the first half. But to his credit, second half he looked really good. I think he created 2 good chances as well, where Xerxes could have scored, maybe even should have scored, to make that game a little bit more competitive. But yeah, they will need to start getting the ball rolling, but if they want to compete properly. Chelsea and Spurs are a bit mediocre so far this year, so they're a little bit disappointing. But like I said, there's only 3 games in. We'll have to see where they are. Maybe going into December, we'll probably have a better idea of exactly who is good, who is bad, what the team would need. January window will be important for a lot of teams. But yeah, the Premier League is looking decent at the moment. And I'll just end on this as well, the Ballon d'Or nominee has come out. Ballon d'Or nominees for the 2024 Ballon d'Or Awards has come out. There was a bit of negativity, a bit of uproar about the names on the list. A lot of fans were disappointed with the quality of the names and have been a bit disappointed with the quality of football recently in terms of individual performances. I think team football wise, the tactics wise, the sport is the best that it's ever been. But the name value of some of the players on this list, I mean, I'll just read it out here. Jude Bellingham, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Dani Carvajal, Ruben Diaz, Artem Dovbyk, Phil Foden, Alejandro Grimaldo, Erling Haaland, Mats Hummels, Harry Kane, Toni Kroos, Ademola Lookman, Emiliano Martinez, Lautaro Martinez. I'll put the list on the screen now so you guys can see who's here. And I can't blame people for being a bit upset with how the quality of players has slightly fallen. I don't think we can blame them. Obviously, we can't blame the players themselves. A lot of people are starting to blame Pep for destroying football, making it such a tactical sport, making it feel robotic. The sport not relying on individual talent as much as it used to. Just to compare the list to about 10 years ago, I've got the list here for the 2014 Ballon d'Or nominee list, which I'll put on this screen. But you can see the quality of the individual quality of players here. Gareth Bale, Benzema, Ronaldo, Messi, Neymar. Like these are they're the names that we grew up on, the names that took the sport to another level. Obviously, before that, there were players like Ronaldinho, Luis Figo, R9. We felt like the generation here, the 2014 generation, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Eden Hazard, they carried it to another level. They took the baton and they produced such amazing moments for us. They were basically our heroes. And then to see the caliber of players on the list now, I think it's fair to say that the individual quality of player has kind of fallen. But I also think it's not these guys. We can't blame these guys. These guys are still, a lot of these guys on this list are still up and coming. Like Bukayo Saka, was he 22, 23? Phil Foden, 22, 23. Haaland, 22, 23. There was a generation before them that let us down. They were meant to carry the baton from the Ibrahimovic, the Toni Kroos. You know what I'm saying? They like Toni Kroos' era, sorry. They were meant to carry the baton from like the guys that we saw here on this 2014 list, from the Ronaldos, from the Schweinsteigers, from the Yaya Toures, from the Lams. They were meant to carry on to the next generation, and very few of them actually succeeded with that. Toni Kroos still being in this list is incredible, shows his longevity. I mean, he retired now, so the fact that he's even nominated as a retired player, incredible. What other name here? I guess Mats Hummels sticking around as well. He was part of that generation. Dani Carvajal, in a way, that's incredible. A few of them have done what they were meant to do. They carried on the legacy, but a lot of players have missed out. I mean, I've got here the 2014 Golden Boy Award nominees. So this is the best young player in the world. Pretty much the young version of the Ballon d'Or around that time. So I believe the winner of that year was Raheem Sterling. So Raheem Sterling now he's at a tough moment in his career. Just moved to Arsenal on loan from Chelsea. We were expecting him to be at the top of the level, top of the list of players, of the best players in the world. He's kind of come up short a little bit, especially in recent years. He was really good, especially at Man City, but recently he's fallen down a bit. I'll put this on the screen as well. I mean, there's some names that if you are my age or around my age, that you would recognize as some of these players, like Domenico Berardi, highly touted. A lot of these players you would know from FIFA as well, where you would expect them to be world class. Kingsley Coman, injury prone. Keita Balde-Diao, injury prone. Laporte, he's still fairly good, but he didn't really show up here. Saul, the drop off for Saul was ridiculous. I mean, when he went to Chelsea, it was bleak. He was not good at all. Seeing names like here, like Alexander Mitrovic, became a very respectable striker, very good goal scorer, but now he's in Saudi. Doesn't look like he's going to be considered one of the best this era. It's tough. I mean, Çalhanoğlu, we've got to respect him. I know a lot of people will probably look at his name on the Ballon d'Or list this year and maybe think, nah, this ain't it. But you got to respect him. He's there. He won the league with Inter last year. He was in the Champions League final the year before. He's had a good career himself, so we got to respect him. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, tough one there. You know what I'm saying? He didn't live up to heights. Maximilian Meyer, he had a short stint at Crystal Palace. I remember him being highly touted. It's tough. Like, Bernardeschi, not great. So you can see that there's a bunch of players here that just didn't live up to the expectation. And we can't forget about other players around those years, like Lukaku, Paul Pogba, Coutinho, Oscar, Januzaj. Those kind of players, they were meant to be the new era. They didn't carry the baton. They didn't carry on the legacy of the best players. And they all had different reasons. Injuries, Pogba with the drug stuff, but just didn't perform how we thought he would at Manchester United. He didn't have as much success as we thought he would have. Lukaku just kind of being an iffy player. We kind of have to blame them for the Ballon d'Or list now not being as stacked as we thought, because they were meant to be here. So I think we just need to give props to these young guys that are here now. We got to believe in them, because I think the guys that are in this list, I think give it 3 years, 4 years, we're going to be seeing them in the same light as I think we saw some of the older players. Especially players like Jude Bellingham. He looks like he's en route to being a great player. Erling Haaland is already an incredible player. He's probably going to win the Ballon d'Or. Kylian Mbappe, a great player. I think he needs to kind of like show us who he actually is again. I think a lot of people are starting to doubt him a little bit, but Kylian Mbappe is Kylian Mbappe. Show us who you are. Show us that World Cup final. Who was that player that was in the World Cup final? The player that we grew up with in the 2018 World Cup. Those Champions League performances at Monaco, like, show us who you are again. Show that hunger. Lamine Yamal's coming to the scene, 16 years old. Florian Wirtz is a great baller. You know what I'm saying? So I think a few of these guys will prove to be that caliber of players. So it's just a matter of time, really. I think, we just got to blame that last generation. They let us down, man. But football is in a good place. Don't let this list kind of dampen your thought on the quality of football now. I think individual players, the quality will be, it's still there. It's just that we need to know them as household names. We'll give them a bit of time, and football will correct itself again, man. But that is everything for this episode. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey. If you did like the episode, like, share, subscribe, follow all the socials in the link below. Again, thank you very much for joining me, and I shall see you in the next one. Take care.